In this episode, we're going to be looking at anchoring and demonstrating some of the techniques you can use to anchor safely overnight.
One of the absolute joys of boating in the Med is anchoring. It allows you to explore some stunning little spots, and sometimes in almost complete privacy. Strangely though, anchoring fills quite a lot of people with some form of trepidation. How to get it set, how to choose the spot, and how to make sure it stays safe. And the thought of actually anchoring overnight fills many a boater with trepidation. We'll take you through some of the steps, make it all a little bit easier. So the first thing is thinking about where you're going to do it. Well, what made me choose this spot? Firstly, it's a secluded little cove. The wind direction currently is towards the bay, but the overnight forecast is wind's going to rotate all the way round. That made me feel safe. I like a gentle offshore breeze for an anchoring exercise. And I wanted somewhere that was sheltered from the prevailing wind as well. Prevailing wind would be coming over there, hills here, and that meant I got reasonably shelter from that as well. I wanted somewhere that had a sandy bottom so I could dig the anchor in well. Weeds difficult to anchor in. But I also wanted somewhere where I was reasonably close to the shore, so if I want, I could take a line ashore, stop my boat rotating all night. Firstly, I'm going to open the anchor locker and show you how we actually lowered the anchor on this boat. Once we've actually got the anchor down and set, we now need to think about, for an overnight stay, there's a few things we can do to improve the situation. Firstly, we've got a snubber on this boat. That allows us to remove the weight of the anchor from the winch itself and transfer it onto this solid block of metal. That means there's tension there, but the chain's slack on the other side. The next thing, if you've ever anchored overnight, is if you're in the fore cabin, you can be kept awake all night as the anchor chain soars backwards and forwards in the fitting on the front. There's a trick to get rid of that. If we thread a line through the anchor chain, tie it off, we can take the weight of that on the cleats. It means it doesn't make a huge noise and drive us mad. So all this is a simple bridle just threaded through the chain and made off, bowline one side, on the cleat the other. Just stops it rattling and keeping me awake at night. Last thing to think about, if I was anchoring somewhere rocky or somewhere where I was concerned I could lose my anchor, I could actually fit something called a tripping line. That's a thin line which attaches to the head of the anchor with a small buoy on it, which would allow me to pull the anchor out from the wrong way if it went wrong. Worth having in case you're ever in a crowded anchorage and concerned about getting stuck. I chose this little cove because it's got nice patches of sandy bottom interspersed with weed. Got to be a little bit careful. You want to be able to see the bottom to make a real good decision. Not always possible if the water's cloudy, but the key thing is we don't want to drop it somewhere stunning and beautiful and trash it with the anchor. So do think very carefully. Conservation is important. As you can see here, we're sat with our stern gently towards the shore. So you've got to think about something called lee shores. That's where the wind would take us if it all went wrong. Now, as I said, the wind's going to turn tonight, and we should swing the other way round. Or I could take a line from the stern of my boat onto the shore to hold me nice and taut. Third option is actually have a kedge anchor and drop my anchors with a space between to either form a Y or a fore and aft to hold the boat still. All of those give me extra security for an overnight anchorage. Now, I mentioned we could use a kedge anchor. Our boat sadly got one of these, which is called a grapnel. I call it a finger eater because these fold up when you're trying to get it in and out, so it's not my favourite. Does a reasonable job in weed though, difficult to use in sand. What we'd have to do for a Y is, having dropped our first anchor, let out plenty of chain, manoeuvre our boat, probably 50 metres to starboard, drop the second anchor, pay out all this chain and all this rope and make them off in a Y. It's quite hard work, and if you need to leave in a hurry, it's quite complicated. My personal preference is I'd take a line to the shore over there. It's nice and near, we'll hold my boat nice and straight, and if there's a problem, I can just undo the line and let it go. To get the line ashore, simplest thing is, once you've got your tender in the water, put the whole line in the tender, pass the loose end up to the boat. I mean, as you either row or motor, depending on your tender, you just pay it out the back, nice and simple. If you just try dragging the end, the line just gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and it really knackers you. So line in the boat, pay out as you go. Once you've got the line ashore, you can either tie it round a nice big rock, or you can use a ground anchor or a spike, depending on what sort of ground you've got, and then attach your line to that. All work. What you want to have is a line that's releasable from on board the boat in case you need to leave in a hurry. Now, whether we've anchored fore and aft, or in a Y, or with an anchor and a line, we're still going to need something to check where we are. Simplest thing of all is a transit. So I've just got the corner of the little promontory in line with the tower in the background. I can glance up at any particular moment. As long as they're pretty close, we haven't dragged. So how did I choose this little spot? Well, firstly I looked at the chart, which gave me an overview of the area, but it's all not a lot of detail. The pilot book was better. That gave me a little write-up of the little colours and coves in this area. And then also the chart plotter. This area is quite well charted, so the charts are really quite nice. This one's set in north up, and at the moment we've got a little southeast easterly breeze. That's why we're being gently pushed towards that shore. But the forecast tonight is it's going to go round to the north, which will mean we're being nicely blown out of the bay if anything happens. I'm quite comfy with that. Having found my sandy spot, how much chain? Well, we're in roughly 6.5 metres of water, and that's measured from the surface of the water. So we've got a big anchor and really good chain. I've won at least 4 times, so 25, 26 metres. For an overnight, I might even put 30 out. Let's be really careful and have an extra bit. That, together with my line ashore, feel really comfy. Can't see any problems there. How do I monitor where I am? Well, we've got the transits, but also on the boat we can put an anchor alarm up, which if we exceed a certain level of drag, will send a nice piercing noise out. If we were really concerned, we can also put a proximity ring around the boat. If anything was to come into that, it would also set an alarm off for me. So there's lots of ways you can ensure that peaceful night. So just to finish off our little session, obviously having an anchorage overnight is a dream that you want to aspire to. Practice your anchoring first, get confident in it. And I think everyone's little nightmare is, what do you do if you get your anchor stuck? Well, if you've done that tripping line, you stand 2 chances of pulling it out. Or even if you just pull the winch tight until the anchor's just vertical and then drive gently ahead, you can often break it free. But if it won't come out, what do? Well, the simple one is put a line through the anchor chain, over the bow, tie a fender to it. Then we can let all the chain out and then come back with a diver another day. How are we going to get it off the boat? Well, sharp knife, and if your boat's well organised, the bitter end of the chain will be attached with a piece of rope. So we can cut the rope, let all the chain out. This little black thing up here is actually an anchor ball. It's quite important. It's in the rule of the road and just lets other people know that you're actually at anchor and they actually need to avoid you. Worth putting it up.